Okay, so I talked about why proteins are so and very important in every aspect of nutrition, be it in animals, be it in fish, as well as in human being. So you don't want actually to mess up with the amount of proteins in the feed that you're making. So the proteins are very important, okay? Understanding the requirement of the proteins for each and every individual fish that you are culturing, okay, is so cardinal that you would be able to know what amount of proteins does this fish actually require, or does that fish require. So now, knowing that we have got two types of amino acids, now why I talked about the reason as to why the fish is becoming so expensive, okay? And the reason was simple. The reason I gave out was due to the fact that when we talk about proteins, those the indispensable amino acids, they cannot be manufactured by the fish itself. The cells of the fish are unable to do that. But of course, they can do it. But now the speed at which they do it, okay, does not actually permit, okay, permit the waiting time, okay, for the maintenance and growth of that fish. So therefore, the fish farmer, we've got to supplement the feed, okay. Now we make some artificial feed. We also got to understand what are those some of the nutrients, amino acids that are either indispensable and dispensable amino acids. Now the following, I will not get into each and every single type of amino acids, but I'll just talk about what are those the most significant one that would actually look for, so that when you're making feed, we are able to supplement those limiting amino acids. So there is the first one is lysine as one of the limiting amino acids, which is actually not in many of the ingredients, either plants and so on and so forth, more especially in soybean, okay, because they tell us to say soybean has got a lot of proteins in it. So when as human being we consume that, we also get the proteins, but that is not actually the case, okay. But when it comes to fish, it is something that the soybean cannot actually compensate. So there isn't so much of the lysine or the methanoin, it's not there, okay. So we start now sourcing of the ingredient that may actually come and be able to contain those limiting or missing out proteins, okay. So these are some of the things why some of the things that you need to understand why proteins are very cardinal, because the amount of proteins in your feed would actually help your fish to result in their optimal growth. So less amount of proteins in the feed would also turn into poor growth, as well as some of the other factors may come in that may actually impact negatively on the fish growth. Now, what are some of the when we talk about proteins, okay, well, we must be able to know how much of these proteins are required in that feed, and of course what kind of animal, what kind of fish species are you keeping. So for each and every single species of fish you are keeping, tilapia, which constitutes so many tilapias, tilapia andersoni, Orochromis andersoni, that is Orochromis andersoni. You can also have tilapia niloticus. You can also have Orochromis niloticus, Orochromis macrocha, and so on. So the reason to that is, if I know the amount of proteins that the tilapia I'm keeping actually needs, and I'll be able to actually know how much of the protein to actually supplement, okay. And if of course I'm someone who is making feed, or if I'm someone who is now interested into venturing into starting up a fish fish feed manufacturing company. So I'd also need the information about how much at the average, okay, how much does the protein, how much of the protein is required in Autochromis niloticus, maybe in catfish, or maybe in some shrimps and crustaceans and other aquatic animals that you might be keeping. So knowing that I have to understand the amount of proteins in terms of percentage, okay, then I'll be able to know how much I'm going to put in, okay, in my feed, okay. Of course, they must be also some other nutrients such as carbohydrates, the vitamins, okay, or some of the additives, you may call them if you like that. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to now, before we close, I want to share also with what are some of the known numbers, or the exact percentages of fish amount of proteins that you must actually put in fish feed. So I've got I'm going just to get the exact amounts so that if there are those of you who are watching, maybe you want to actually get this information correctly, and you don't want to mess up with that, and I'll actually get it for you. So these are the protein levels that you might want to include in aquaculture feed. So generally they are based on average, meaning the first one is 18 to 20%, meaning for marine shrimp, and then also the second one is 0.8 to 32% of the protein should be in your feed, and this is for catfish, okay. That is catfish 0.8 to 32, as well as also the first one which I mentioned, 18 to 20 for marine shrimp. And then we also go to tilapia. Now this tilapia probably it can include macrocha and the sunai, niloticus, and so on, and other tilapias that may be within this family of fish tilapia. So the tilapia can constitute the amount of, or rather the protein levels, okay, so proteins levels in tilapia may be 38 and to 42, okay. So these are some of the levels of proteins that you can include in the aquaculture feed or aquatic feeds, depending on the species that you are keeping, Okay, so now we also have the requirements. Also, they may vary, okay. We may get the requirement different, okay, depending on the age of the fish that we are talking about. We also have the environment may also be a factor that may also determine how much of the protein we might include, as well as also the water temperature may also be a consideration factor in terms of how much protein requirement should be there, and also genetic composition of fish, okay. So genetics, we mean about what are some of the composition of this fish, okay, in terms of the proteins and other stuffs, okay. So there is so much to talk about in terms of genetic composition of fish, because this is something that is very vast on its own. So I'll actually make a video on that one. And lastly but not the least, we also have feeding rates of fish. So the feeding rates of the fish may also actually impact on the protein levels of the fish that should be included. So when you talk about feeding rates, some of the fish, they feed a lot, so they are feeding a lot, so you also have to put in so much of the protein, so that you want to actually accelerate the growth rate within the early stages of fish growth, other than supplementing them later on when the fish is